the warrior who never lost a battle, Khalid ibn Walid. There are names in history that are not only carved into stone, but etched into the memory of time itself, with blood, with conviction, and with choices that reshape the fate of an entire people. One of those names is Khalid ibn al-Walid. People called him a title that sent a chill through the Islamic world, the sword of God, a warrior who had never tasted defeat, a man who snapped 9 swords in a single battle, and who made the mightiest empires of the West tremble before the faith of one human being. But what made Khalid truly great was not only victory. It was the strange journey he walked, from a proud child of Mecca, raised among sand and flame, to a fighter who turned faith into power. Picture a desert with no horizon, where people are born either to conquer or to be conquered. That is where Khalid came into the world. He was not born into poverty, and he carried no mark of prophecy. He was simply a warrior's child, a grain of sand in the sea of the Arabs, yet inside his heart burned a fire that would light up history. Welcome to Echoes of Eternity, where timeless stories are retold to stir the heart and wake the faith that has fallen asleep. Today, come with me as we turn back the clock more than 14 centuries to uncover the mystery of a man who was given a title only extraordinary souls could bear, the Sword of God. Khalid was born into the noble clan of Quraysh, the most powerful tribe in Mecca. His father, Walid ibn al-Mughira, was one of its wealthiest and most respected men. From childhood, Khalid was sent out into the desert to grow up under nature's harsh hand, where the wind burns the skin, the sand cuts like blades, and the cold of night can kill the weak. Yet there, his body and spirit were forged. He learned to read the wind, to catch the scent of a battlefield, and to understand that life belongs only to those who dare to fight for it. When he returned to Mecca, Khalid was no longer a boy. He was a young man with a proud stance and eyes like a drawn blade. He rode a horse as if it were part of his own body. His arrows rarely missed, and he was the pride of his clan. The Arabs honored a warrior's blood, and Khalid was the embodiment of it. But what they did not see was that within this fighter's heart, God was quietly preparing another path, not only to put a sword in his hand, but to turn that very sword into a sacred symbol of faith. At that time, Mecca was a center of idols. Hundreds of statues stood within the sanctuary of the Kaaba, and people bowed to stone and gold while forgetting the Creator. In that society, lineage defined your rank, and the sword decided your life. Khalid understood this well. He grew up with the pride of Quraysh, believing that power could bend justice to its will. No one, not even Muhammad ibn Abdullah, a kinsman many called a dreamer, could change him. But destiny had begun to move. In a place where blood and sand mixed into one, God was testing the strongest hearts. When the first light of Islam appeared, Mecca split in two. On one side was a new faith calling for mercy and justice. On the other stood the old order, drunk on power and pride. Khalid chose to fight. He did not know that those first battles would crack his heart, and that destiny was waiting to remake him in the light. From a child of the desert, Khalid carried sand and wind in every step. He believed the path of a warrior was to hold the sword until his last breath. He did not yet know that there is a weapon stronger than steel and blood, faith. And when that light came, it would not only transform one man, it would help change the course of human history. If you want to know what made an undefeated warrior like Khalid lay everything down and bow to God, stay with me until the end of this video. The journey of the sword of God is not only a story of war, it is the journey of a soul that found light after its darkest years. Hit subscribe on Echoes of Eternity to support us so we can keep telling you the stories that have walked alongside time. Stories that make you look within and believe that even in the driest desert, God can raise up a sword of light. After the Battle of Badr, the red dust of the desert had not yet settled before the honor of Quraysh was torn apart. News that the Muslims, those who had been forced from their homes yet won through faith and resolve, rushed across the Arabian Peninsula like thunder splitting a dry sky. Among the furious, humiliated, and confused stood a warrior named Khalid ibn Walid, a man who did not yet know that from that very day his life would turn down a road no one expected. His brother Walid had vanished from the field at Badr. When the news arrived, it felt like a blade through Khalid's chest. He could not believe his once proud brother could fall to those they called rebels. But the blow was more than defeat. Walid had not died. He had been captured and held by the Muslims. To Khalid, that was worse than death because it struck at the family's honor. He paid the ransom and brought his brother home. But the man who returned was no longer the Walid he had known. There was a strange light in Walid's eyes, calm, deep, and clear, like someone who had glimpsed a world beyond this one. Walid no longer spoke of power or lineage. He spoke of God. He spoke of a faith where all people were equal, where hearts were measured by belief, not wealth. Khalid listened, but he could not accept it. To him, it was betrayal. It was surrendering the spirit of Quraysh. Khalid said, "You have dishonored our father. You have forgotten your own blood for a man who calls himself the messenger of the Most High." Walid only smiled. "No, Khalid, you are the one who does not yet see that the Most High has always been with you." For many nights after that, Khalid could not sleep. His brother's words echoed in his mind. He looked at Mecca, at the towering idols within the Kaaba, at the people bowing to stone, and for the first time in his life, he felt something wrong in it. But a warrior's pride would not let him yield. He kept fighting. He kept resisting this new faith until the day of Uhud arrived. At Uhud, Khalid became the man who turned the tide. When the Muslim archers abandoned their post to gather spoils, he saw the opening as if it were destiny itself. He led his cavalry around the mountain's flank, struck from behind, and threw the Muslims into chaos. For the first time since Badr, they were defeated. Amid the smoke and flame, Khalid stood on a hill and looked down. He saw mutilated bodies, men dragged away to the cheers of those drunk on victory. But deep in his chest, that victory brought no glory, only emptiness. He saw a body treated with cruel disrespect. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And something inside him broke. He did not understand why. From that day on, Khalid's sleep was haunted. The quiet peace of his brother at prayer slipped between nightmares soaked in blood. He began to doubt himself. He had believed that triumph rose from the sword, but now he saw another force greater than steel, a faith that made people unafraid of death. When the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was signed, he stood among Quraysh and watched the Muslims perform Umrah with order and dignity. They showed no hatred, no thirst for revenge. Their eyes shone with serenity. For the first time, Khalid felt conquered, not by weapons, but by the light in those eyes. That night he returned home, sat by a dying lamp, and reread a letter from his brother in Medina. In it, Walid wrote, "The Prophet asked about you. He said that God will guide you to the light. Khalid, you have missed many chances in life, but do not miss the greatest one, to be forgiven." The paper trembled in his hands, and he wept. They were the tears of a warrior, the kind he thought he had buried long ago. A few days later, he mounted his horse and rode toward Medina. On the road, he met an old friend, Uthman ibn Talha. Khalid said, "I am searching for the truth. If you want, come with me." Uthman did not ask questions. He simply nodded. They left Mecca together, and halfway there they met Amr ibn al-As, once an enemy of the Prophet. The three men turned toward one destination. When Khalid entered Medina, the first person he met was Walid. His brother embraced him and said, "The messenger of God knew you would come. He is waiting for you." Khalid went in and saw the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him, and he knelt. He was no longer the proud warrior of Quraysh. He was a man who had found dawn after a long night. The Prophet looked at him, smiling with a warmth like light. "You have come late, Khalid, but it is never too late. From today, you are one of the swords of God." In that moment, a great weight slid from Khalid's shoulders. All the years he had lived for honor and war gathered into a single sentence: "There is no deity but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God." A warrior had bowed, and in that very bow, he stood taller than ever. History had found its sword of God, not forged in blood alone, but in the awakening of a soul. After pledging allegiance to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, Khalid ibn al-Walid was no longer a warrior of Quraysh. He had become a warrior of faith, a soul reborn from the fire of war and the stirring of the heart. From that moment, Khalid's life stepped into a new era, an era of triumphs history would never stop repeating, not because of bloodshed, but because of brilliance and unmatched loyalty. Almost as soon as he embraced Islam, Khalid faced his first trial, the Battle of Mu'tah. The Muslim army numbered only 3,000, while the mighty Byzantine Empire fielded more than 100,000. The first three commanders fell one after another, and in the depth of despair, every eye turned to Khalid. He took the banner not with the pride of a general, but with the fear that this newborn faith might be extinguished in its first trial by fire. Under a rain of arrows and the screams of enemies, Khalid turned the battle by cunning more than force. He shifted formations and rotated units so the enemy would think reinforcements had arrived. When night fell, that small army withdrew in order, not a rout, but a masterstroke. Mu'tah ended, and Khalid returned with 9 broken swords, while his faith stood firmer than ever. From then on, the Prophet gave him a title no one else in history has carried, the Sword of God. From that day, Khalid no longer fought for his own honor. He fought for the survival of belief. He became the commander even his enemies admitted was a strategic genius. He understood people better than anyone, knowing when to strike and when to frighten an opponent with silence. In every campaign, he led from the front, yet he never fought blind. Khalid often said, "A true victory is not when the enemy falls. It is when they finally understand why they could not win." The Battle of Yarmuk, was the peak of that art of command. The Muslims had only a few thousand, while Byzantine forces were 30 times larger, with heavy cavalry, armor, and superior weapons. Khalid did not see numbers. He saw courage. He split his army into small groups, sending them to attack and withdraw in rotation, exhausting and confusing the enemy. He used the desert, the wind, and the sand to create the illusion of a vast host. When the moment ripened, he called for an all-out charge. The cry of "God is greater" rolled like thunder, and the Byzantine Empire, ruler of the East for centuries, crumbled in a single morning. When people asked how he defeated such a massive force, Khalid untied his turban. Inside, it was a hair and a fragment of the Prophet's beard. Peace and blessings be upon him. He said, "I carry his blessing, and no battle have I lost while it was with me." To him, it was not a charm. It was a reminder that victory comes not from human hands, but from God. In the years that followed, Khalid led campaign after campaign across vast lands, Syria, Iraq, Persia, yet he never let glory blind him. After each success, he gave thanks to God and shared the spoils with his soldiers. He lived as simply as a common fighter. Even as commander-in-chief, he slept on sand, ate what his men ate, built no palaces, and gathered no riches. His soldiers loved him not only for his courage, but for his fairness and humility. Khalid would tell his men, "I do not ask you to fight for me. I ask you to fight for God. If I fall, keep moving forward, because God never falls." Those words carved themselves into thousands of hearts, driving them to fight not for orders, but for faith. When the Prophet passed away, Khalid was among those who grieved the most. He carried that blessed hair with him into every battle. People said that when he loosened his turban, the sunlight flashed on that strand as if it were gleaming from a burning sword. To him, it was the memory of his teacher and commander, and the proof of a sacred bond between a human being and the Creator. What made Khalid great was not only that he never lost, it was that he understood the meaning of victory. He never killed those who surrendered. He did not plunder. He did not seize people as slaves. He believed the aim of war was not destruction, but opening a path for the light. In every land he conquered, he allowed people to keep their religion and property, asking only that they live in peace. Khalid once said, "If victory makes us forget compassion, then it is no victory at all." Perhaps that is why he was called the Sword of God, not only for strength, but for righteousness of heart. He proved that a warrior can also be a person of faith, someone who understands that true power sometimes lies in knowing when to stop. When the world looked at Khalid toppling great empires, they saw a fighter. When God looked at him, he saw a faithful servant. Amid the thunder of hooves and the flash of blades, Khalid left humanity an undying lesson. Glory is temporary, but faith, when strong enough, can shake the course of history. When the fires of war dimmed and the banner of Islam flew across the East, the name of Khalid ibn al-Walid still rang as a symbol of victory. Yet behind that splendor, destiny had prepared another test, not on the battlefield, but within. The man who had never known defeat would face another kind of loss, the wasting of the body and the emptiness that comes when the sword must rest. After the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, passed away, Khalid kept campaigning under Caliph Abu Bakr and then under Caliph Umar. Under his command, the Muslims conquered vast territories from Iraq to Syria, from the Euphrates to Damascus. He led his forces like an unstoppable river. Wherever it flowed, victory followed. Byzantines trembled at his name, while soldiers considered it the highest honor to fight at his side. Then, in the middle of all those shouts of triumph, a decision stunned the army. Caliph Umar removed Khalid from supreme command. The messenger arrived with the letter while battle raged at its fiercest. Khalid opened it, read it slowly, folded it, and said nothing. He slipped the letter into his tunic and hid it until the fighting was done. When victory was secure, he stood before his successor. Abu Ubaidah took off his helmet, handed over his sword, and said, "From now on, you are the commander. I am only a soldier under your lead." No complaint, no resistance, no anger. A warrior who had brought empires to their knees bowed to a single order because he knew that no one carries a sword for himself. He carries it for God. That humility made him greater than all his victories. Later, Caliph Umar said he had removed Khalid not for any fault, but because the people had begun to idolize him. They believed victory came from Khalid rather than from God, and Umar feared that belief would twist the true meaning of jihad. Khalid felt no bitterness. He said, "I fight for faith, not for titles. If God wills, I will keep fighting, even as a common soldier." In his final years, Khalid left the battlefield for Homs, a quiet city in Syria, where he served as governor. He lived simply, without luxury or palaces. The gold that once came with victory, he gave to his soldiers and the poor. When asked why he kept nothing for old age, he said, "I have had everything, fame, power, triumph. Now I want only the peace of my heart." That peace did not last. The body that had borne hundreds of wounds began to betray him. The hand that gripped a sword now trembled. The eyes that once saw through smoke and chaos grew dim. He lay on a bed in a small room with only a few old friends beside him. Outside, the world still spoke his title, Saifullah, the sword of God. But inside him lay a deep regret. He had never died on the battlefield. One morning, Khalid asked to be helped up. He looked down at a body covered in scars. There was not an inch of skin without a mark. His voice rough with feeling, he said, "There is no part of me that has not been struck by a sword, pierced by an arrow, or stabbed by a spear. Yet here I am, dying in my bed like a coward. I beg God to forgive me. I long to die in the place He loves, and He let me live long enough to learn that sacrifice is not only in blood." He lifted his eyes toward the ceiling, longing in his gaze. O day of Yarmuk, the day I heard swords sing and felt the earth shake under the horses. I once lived in the heart of the storm, and now there is only silence. Before his last breath, Khalid gave his instructions. "When I die, do not lay gold or jewels beside me. Bury me with my horse and my sword. Give the horse to the bravest soldier so it will keep charging into the smoke of battle. Dig my grave with this sword, because it is the only thing I have trusted until the final moment." He smiled faintly, then recited the Shahada, the final testimony of a believer. There is no deity but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. His breathing faded, and his face grew peaceful, as if he had fallen asleep. When the news spread, soldiers in Syria, Iraq, and Persia wept aloud. They remembered the commander who rode at the front, the steady voice that gave orders in a rain of arrows, the stern eyes that were still kind. Caliph Umar heard and spoke through tears. "Women will never again give birth to a man like Khalid." they laid him to rest with his old sword and armor in a simple unmarked grave. No gold, no jewels, only sand and wind, the very things that had raised him since childhood. In the quiet of the desert, perhaps God smiled as he welcomed the soul of a most faithful warrior, a man who had never stepped back, not because he was immortal, but because he knew how to bow before the will of the Creator. Khalid ibn Walid is gone, but the echo of his hoofbeats still rides through history. One sword has stopped swinging, yet its light has never gone out. The world still remembers Khalid ibn Walid as an undefeated commander who brought mighty empires to heel through will and faith. But if we see him only as a general, we miss the deepest truth. His legacy is not found in the number of battles he won or the lands he conquered. It lives in the message his life wrote in blood, in loyalty, and in the awakening of the soul. It is a lesson about the real strength of a human being, the strength of faith, compassion, and knowledge. When Khalid died, Islam had grown beyond the Arabian Peninsula and reached wide swaths of the East. People remember him not only for the borders he pushed outward, but for how he did it. In the places he entered, there was no mindless slaughter and no pointless bloodshed. He brought justice and order not with iron, but with the heart of a man who believed in God. Khalid once said, "We did not come to take their wealth. We came to free them from servitude to other people so they could serve God alone." In those words, he saw the true essence of jihad, a struggle not only on the battlefield, but in the soul of every person. Centuries later, the scholar Bediüzzaman Said Nursi wrote, "In an age of civilization, victory does not come from the sword. It comes from persuasion and knowledge." If Khalid lived in that age, perhaps he would have nodded in agreement, because his life already proved that victory matters only when it opens a path for the light. A sword, no matter how sharp, can touch the body. Knowledge and compassion touch the heart. And when the heart changes, the world follows. Khalid's death was not an ending. It was the beginning of our understanding of true strength. The warrior forged in the fire of war became a symbol of humility and service. He never chased fame. When it found him, he did not keep it for himself. He won and never glorified himself, seeing every triumph as a gift from God. In an age when power often makes people forget their limits, Khalid reminds us that the strongest person is the one who knows how to yield before the Almighty. His legacy does not stop at religion. It crosses the borders of belief and reaches the core of our shared humanity. Anyone, even those outside Islam, can see in him a model of someone who lived and was ready to die for what he knew was right. He taught that a human life, though brief, can burn like a beacon when it is lived for a purpose higher than the self. Not everyone is chosen to be the sword of God, but anyone can choose to live as a warrior, fighting with faith and honesty in the life they have been given. Today, in a noisy world where bullets and hateful words still echo, Khalid's legacy reminds us that true jihad is not killing or taking. It is the inner struggle, defeating our ego, our pride, and our fear. That fight demands more courage than any clash of armies. The person who wins it is the one who puts faith, morals, and compassion above every hunger for power. We live in a different era, but the values Khalid left still breathe with life. In an age of knowledge, the sword of God is no longer made of iron. It is made of the light of understanding, of the pen, of fair words, and of a heart full of love. That is the jihad of this century, a struggle with intellect, ethics, and steady faith. Any one of us can carry that sword, not to cut the storm outside, but to cut through the darkness within. That is why Khalid's story never ends. It keeps being told, not only in books, but in the hearts of people searching for the meaning of true strength. Strength is not the power to bend others. It is the power to bend yourself toward what is right. When Khalid laid down his sword, he taught the world a lesson greater than any triumph. Faith does not need steel to protect it, because its real light is enough to scatter the dark. In the wind that crosses the desert of Homs where he rests, some say you can still hear the far-off beat of hooves, a whisper from the past that people of true faith never vanish. They trade the sword for the pen. They trade the battlefield for the world of knowledge and compassion. And somewhere in this age, there will be modern-day Khalids, not conquering with blood, but with reason, mercy, and the light of truth. For God does not need the strong. He needs hearts that dare to believe. The deepest lesson we can carry today is this: each of us has a battle of our own. Some fight fear, some fight ambition. Some fight to find light in the shadows of life. Bring Khalid's spirit into our modern world, firm in faith, humble in action, strong in ideals, and gentle in how we treat others. When we choose wisdom over violence and compassion over pride, we carry a sword of God within us, not to wound, but to shine light on the world. If this journey moved you, join the Echoes of Eternity community, where we explore timeless stories and profound truths about faith, history, and the awakening of the human spirit. Do not forget to subscribe to Echoes of Eternity to give us the push to create more meaningful work that helps you uncover the immortal light hidden within your own heart.